We also were going to have Elizabeth Kraft on to talk about our power grid and the vulnerability there and the closing of the coal plants.
All right, so do you have the power grid story a couple weeks ago we did on the
For the record.
I was going to say Back to the Future.
There's new information on it.
What's the new information?
Elizabeth Kraft can tell us.
So Elizabeth, there's one story that I don't think I've seen anybody report on. During the winter, we were close to losing the grid entirely in the east. And we were, from what I understand, I love your understanding on this, we were one plant away from having the grid go down because there's just not enough power plants, right?
Right. There was an incredible amount of stress put on the entire grid this winter. It was a long, cold winter, Glenn, as you know. In fact, some states were still seeing snow on their yards and in their cars this week. It's the middle of April. So 75% of the coal plants that are supposed to be shut down next year were called upon to provide power for this last long winter. And it's just, the EPA regulations are getting a little ridiculous.
Okay, so I was told by some friends in the power industry that came to me and they had like no blood in their head. And they said, Glenn, you have got to get this word out because we were one plant would have gone offline. We would have blacked out in the east. And the president is closing these plants in the next 12 months.
Right. The Tennessee Valley Authority is a great example of that, Glenn. So they're supposed to see 20 of their coal-fired plants shut down. And those were the actual plants that met the electricity demand. They had an electricity demand high this winter, and those plants are supposed to be scheduled to be shut down. So what we're seeing here is essentially almost a panic situation in the energy industry.
We have a problem too that we are not laying any natural gas pipe anywhere, and so because especially in the east, everybody is saying not in my backyard, I don't want the gas lines, everything else. So we're not building any clean energy because apparently there's no energy clean enough. What is the administration saying about any of this?
So I have to say that the people who are talking about building up our reliance on natural gas, they do have a point. So for instance, natural gas is one of the most efficient, clean-burning fossil fuels. But the problem is some of these EPA regulations are counterintuitive. For instance, they say, well, we want to burn less fossil fuel, so instead of the natural gas pumps actually running, the natural gas running the gas pumps, they say those have to be electric. Well, that still requires natural gas, or it requires fossil fuels to be burned. So if if the electric grid does go down, Glenn, for instance, that means those pumps wouldn't work at all. So natural gas would be eliminated from a crucial part, which would be black start capability. Glenn, when the grid goes down, we have to be able to maintain that capability.
Where do these imbeciles at the EPA think electricity comes from?
That's the boggling question, Glenn. So the EPA, again, these regulations are so circular. I'm going to explain black start capability for our audience in case they don't understand. Electricity requires electricity. You can't make it without having some place to start. And coal-fired plants are exactly the place to do that. They usually maintain a supply of about 90 days. So they can run for about 3 months, even if the entire grid is shut down. And that's a critical component here that no one is really talking about. So when these coal plants are gone, if the capability is wiped out because of these regulations, we're going to be in a really tough situation.
Well, one more question before you leave. Is there anything that people can do? Can they call anybody and say, knock this? Is there anything they can do, or is this just the die is cast?
So they can call, but the bottom line is some congressmen are trying to fix this problem, but they're saying that there's no way it'll be taken up in the Senate because of the way Harry Reid views the issue.
We're going to be in for a very long, cold winter next year. Thanks a lot.